Please don't hurt him. He's all I have left, a trembling mother begged the most dangerous man in Chicago. Winter had settled into the city with brutal certainty. Snow blanketed the streets of South Side, piling high against rusted fire escapes and cracked sidewalks. The wind howled through narrow alleyways like a wounded animal, biting through coats and scarves without mercy. Christmas lights blinked cheerfully in the wealthy neighborhoods up north, Gold Coast mansions glowing warm, families laughing behind frosted windows, children dreaming of presents under towering trees. But here, in the forgotten corners of the city, frost and silence ruled. Dim lights flickered behind thin curtains. Heat was a luxury. Hope felt like a stranger. Camille Ashford, 28, walked carefully down one of those broken streets. Her boots, worn at the soles, left shallow prints in the gray slush. A faded navy coat 2 sizes too big, bought from a thrift store 3 winters ago, hung loose on her thin frame. Her dark brown hair was pulled back in a messy bun, loose strands escaping and sticking to her pale cheeks. In her arms, a plastic bag held discounted groceries, a dented can of chicken soup, day-old bread, and a small carton of milk marked half price. Exhaustion showed in her posture, in her slow steps, in the purple shadows beneath her hazel eyes. Still, she wore a gentle smile, the kind that cost everything to maintain. Inside, though, her thoughts were anything but quiet. Her 5-year-old son, Noah, had been getting weaker. His heart condition congenital, the doctors said. Something he was born with had worsened with the cold. Their apartment was a freezer. The heater had died 2 weeks ago. Windows were sealed with duct tape and old newspapers. She had wrapped Noah in every blanket they owned, but it wasn't enough. It was never enough. I just need to make it through this month, she murmured, breath clouding the frozen air. Then maybe I can afford his medicine. Maybe. At the corner of her block stood a small laundromat paint, peeling, neon sign half dead, machines older than the building itself. Maggie's Wash and Fold, run by a kind Irish woman who asked too few questions and paid in cash. Camille worked there 6 nights a week. No benefits, no insurance. She folded strangers' clothes, scrubbed stains that weren't hers, smiled at customers who never remembered her name. She never complained. She just worked hands raw, back aching, heart heavy with things she couldn't say. But in the shadows of this crumbling neighborhood, something far darker was moving. 3 blocks away, a black SUV idled beneath a broken streetlight. Inside, 2 men watched the laundromat through tinted windows. One of them scrolled through photos on his phone, a woman with dark hair, a little boy with hollow cheeks. "That's her," he said. "Brennan wants the money by Friday. If she can't pay." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Across the city, in a penthouse that touched the clouds, Vincent Moretti stood alone by a wall of glass. Lake Michigan stretched below him like black silk. City lights scattered across its surface like fallen stars. His reflection stared back, sharp jaw, cold gray eyes, a face carved from stone and silence. He held a glass of whiskey, but didn't drink. On his desk, files lay open names, territories, debts, the machinery of an empire built on fear. "Derek Brennan is pushing into Southside," Leo Santini reported from the doorway, "running loans to desperate people. Women, mostly, single mothers. Anyone who can't fight back." Vincent's jaw tightened. "On my ground?" "He thinks you're too busy to notice." Vincent set the glass down slowly. His voice dropped to something quieter than a whisper and far more dangerous. "There are rules, Leo. I don't care what business a man runs. But you don't touch women. You don't touch children. Not on my streets. Not ever." He turned from the window. His eyes held no warmth, no mercy, only the cold clarity of a man who had learned long ago that the world did not protect the weak, so he would. "There's one name that keeps coming up," Leo continued carefully. "Camille Ashford, 28, single mother. Her ex-husband borrowed $50,000 from Brennan, then vanished. Now Brennan's making her pay." Vincent was silent. "She's got a kid, 5 years old, some kind of heart problem. Can't afford treatment." Something flickered behind Vincent's eyes, something old, something buried. For a moment, he wasn't in the penthouse anymore. He was 14, kneeling in a frozen alley, holding his 8-year-old brother Matteo, as the boy's breath grew shallow and then stopped. They couldn't afford a doctor. No one came. No one cared. Matteo had looked up at him with fading eyes and whispered, "Are you cold, big brother? Hold me." Vincent had held him until the warmth left his body. And something inside Vincent had died that night too, frozen solid, locked away where no one could reach it. Until now. "I want eyes on her," Vincent said quietly. No one touches her. No one touches the boy. Leo hesitated. You want to handle this personally? Vincent didn't answer. He reached for his coat, simple, black, unremarkable. Tonight, he wouldn't be the king of Chicago's underworld. Tonight, he would be a ghost. He stepped into the elevator and descended 40 floors into the night. The snow was falling harder now, blanketing the city in white silence. Vincent drove himself, no driver, no guards, just a man in the shadows, moving toward a place he had no reason to go. He parked across the street from the laundromat and watched through the frosted windshield. Inside, under flickering fluorescent lights, a woman folded towels with tired hands. Her movements were slow but deliberate, efficient, like someone who had learned to survive on fumes and willpower alone. A little boy sat in the corner, wrapped in an oversized sweater, drawing something on scrap paper. Every few minutes, he coughed a weak, rattling sound that carried through the glass. Vincent watched for a long time. He didn't know her name yet, didn't know the sound of her voice, or the way she hummed lullabies to her son when she thought no one was listening. He didn't know that she had been hit, abandoned, hunted, and still woke every morning to fight for one more day. But he would learn, because inside that crumbling laundromat was a mother who had nothing left to give, and a little boy with a broken heart who still believed the world could be kind. And for the first time in 22 years, Vincent Moretti felt something crack inside his chest. Something warm, something terrifying, something that felt dangerously like hope. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories so you never miss a moment, because the best stories are the ones that stay with you long after the last word. 3 days later, the darkness came looking. Vincent was still in the same place, the corner of the laundromat near the window, where he could watch without being noticed. He had come here every night since the first time, saying nothing, only sitting and looking, watching Camille work, watching Noah draw, watching the two of them share weary smiles that were still full of love inside this battered old shop. He did not know what he was doing. He only knew he could not stop coming back. Tonight, the air was different, heavier, more threatening. The shop door flew open with a loud bang. Cold wind rushed in along with 3 figures. The man in front was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a glossy black leather jacket. His face was sharp and cruel, his eyes as cold as steel as they swept over the laundromat with contempt. Derek Brennan. Vincent recognized him instantly. The loan shark who was pushing into Vincent's Southside territory. A man with no principles and no limits. 2 goons followed behind Derek, blocking the doorway like guard dogs. Maggie, the laundromat owner, rose from behind the counter, her aged face tightening with worry. What do you want? She asked, her voice trembling even as she tried to sound firm. Derek did not bother looking at her. His gaze had already locked onto Camille, who stood frozen beside a pile of unfolded laundry, her face white as paper. Camille Ashford. Derek spoke her name slowly, each word dropping like a piece of ice. Your husband owes me $50,000. He disappeared. You're still here. You understand the rules of the game, don't you? Camille swallowed. She backed up 1 step, her spine pressing against an old washing machine. I don't have money, she said, her voice shaking. Ryan left. I don't know where he is. I don't care. Derek cut in, moving toward her with heavy steps. A debt is a debt. Who borrowed it doesn't matter. What matters is who pays it back. Maggie stepped forward to stand between them. Don't you bully her. She's just a worker here. She has nothing. Derek stopped, looking at the old woman with disdain. Then, without a word of warning, he shoved her hard. Maggie staggered and fell to the floor, her head striking the leg of a plastic chair. She groaned, one hand clutching her shoulder. Maggie! Camille screamed, starting to run to help. But Derek was faster. He grabbed Camille by the collar and yanked her back, his face only inches from hers. Listen, he snarled, his breath reeking of cigarettes and cheap whiskey. You've got 3 days. 3 days and I come back. If there's no money. He did not finish the sentence. He did not have to. The ruthless look in his eyes said everything. Camille trembled violently, tears spilling down her cheeks. She could not breathe. She could not think. She only wanted it all to turn into a nightmare, so she could wake up. Then a cry rang out. Mom! Mom! Everyone. Noah ran from the corner, tears streaming, his small hands clinging tightly to Camille's leg. The boy sobbed, his thin body shaking like a leaf in a storm. Derek released Camille and took a step back. He looked down at the child, and an ugly smile spread across his mouth. Oh, he drawled. Cute little kid. He crouched, reaching out as if to touch Noah's face. Camille immediately pulled her son behind her, using her own body as a shield. In her eyes now, there was no fear, only the instinct of a mother willing to die for her child. "Don't touch my son," she said, her voice trembling but firm. Derek laughed loudly. "Maybe the kid's worth something. Kidneys, heart, eyes. The black market pays real well." It was as if someone had punched Camille in the chest. She held Noah tight, her whole body shaking beyond her control. In the corner, Vincent sat motionless as stone, but inside him, a volcano was erupting. He saw everything. Derek shoving Maggie down, Derek grabbing Camille by the collar, Derek threatening the child, and Vincent felt something rising in his chest, something he had buried for 22 years. His hand clenched, his knuckles turning white. He wanted to stand up. He wanted to smash Derek Brennan's face to pieces. He wanted to make him understand what he was touching, but not yet. He had intended to remain a ghost, to let a calculated plan unfold in the shadows. But as he looked at the boy's trembling frame and heard Brennan's vile threats, the cold discipline of a kingpin shattered. The fury of the 14-year-old boy he used to be, the one who couldn't save his own brother, surged to the surface. He couldn't stay in the shadows. Not while history was trying to repeat itself. Derek turned and walked out the door, the two goons behind him. Before he left, he looked back at Camille one last time. 3 days, he repeated. "Don't think about running. I'll find you." And the kid. The door slammed shut. The cold wind stopped pouring in, but the fear remained in the air, heavy as lead. Camille collapsed to the floor, holding Noah tight in her arms, crying without sound. Maggie struggled to sit up, one hand still clutching her aching shoulder, and Vincent, he still sat there in the darkness, watching Camille and her son with eyes that were no longer cold. There was only resolve now, and a quiet fury, waiting for the day it would break loose. Derek had not even made it out the door yet. A voice came from the corner of the laundromat, low and cold as ice splitting in the heart of winter. "Step outside. Now." Everyone in the shop turned. Derek stopped mid-stride. His two goons immediately slipped their hands inside their coats, ready to draw weapons. Camille lifted her head, tears still clinging to her cheeks, and looked toward the one who had spoken. Vincent rose from the chair in the dark corner. He walked into the light, each step slow but certain, like a panther moving in on its prey. His face showed no emotion at all. His gray eyes, cold as tempered steel, fixed on Derek with a calm that was terrifying. Derek frowned. He was not used to anyone daring to challenge him, especially some stranger in a rundown laundromat on the south side. "Who the hell are you?" Derek asked, his tone thick with contempt. "This is private business. It's got nothing to do with you." Vincent did not answer right away. He kept walking, closing the distance between them. Derek's two men tensed, hands tight around the grips of their guns inside their coats, but Vincent acted as if he did not see them, or rather, as if they were not worth seeing. He stopped less than 2 paces from Derek, close enough for Derek to see his eyes clearly, eyes with no fear, no hesitation, only the absolute coldness of a man who had seen hell and walked out of it. "I asked you who you are," Derek repeated, and his voice was a little less aggressive now. There was something in the stare of this unfamiliar man that made him uneasy, even if he refused to admit it. Vincent tilted his head slightly. The corner of his mouth lifted in a thin smile, sharp as a blade. "Someone you do not want to know." His voice was not loud, but each word dropped like a boulder into the silence. There was no noisy threat, no showy violence, only a simple truth, deadly in its certainty. Derek looked into Vincent's eyes, and for the first time tonight, he felt cold. Not the cold of the winter outside, the cold of survival instinct screaming in his skull, telling him that the man in front of him was not an opponent he wanted. The two goons looked at each other, then at Derek, waiting for an order. But Derek did not give one. He was calculating, weighing. Vincent stood there, still as stone, yet giving off an invisible pressure that made the air in the laundromat seem to thicken. He did not need to say more. He did not need to do anything. His presence alone was enough for Derek to understand that if he took one more step, he would pay for it. And Derek Brennan, for all his cruelty, was not a fool. "Fine," he said, forcing his voice into something like calm, though everyone could hear the strain in it. "I'm leaving, but this isn't over." "Sir." He turned his eyes on Camille, the hatred still there. 3 days, remember that." Then he turned and walked out, the two goons behind him. Before he left, he looked back at Vincent one more time, trying to memorize the face of the man who had dared to challenge him. He would find out who this was. And he would take revenge. The shop door closed. A car engine roared, then faded into the snowy night. Silence returned. Camille was still on the floor, holding Noah tight in her arms, her heart hammering out of rhythm. She looked up at the stranger who had just saved her. She wanted to say something, to thank him, to ask who he was and why he had helped her. But as soon as she opened her mouth, Vincent turned his back and started toward the rear door. "Please wait," Camille called, her voice rough. "Who are you? Why are you?" Vincent stopped, but he did not turn around. He stood there for a moment, his back still to her, his shadow stretching long across the floor under the flickering fluorescent light. "Don't worry about Brennan," he said, his voice low and quiet. "He won't come back." Then he pushed through the back door and stepped outside, vanishing into the white curtain of snow as if he had never been there at all. Camille stared after him, her mouth parted, but no words came. She did not understand. She did not understand anything. Who was that man? Why was he here? Why had he saved her? And how could he, with only a few words and a look, make Derek Brennan, the man she believed no one could stop, bow his head and retreat? Maggie braced her hands on the floor and struggled to sit up, still holding her aching shoulder. She looked toward the back door that had swung shut, her eyes thoughtful. "Do you know him?" Camille asked, her voice trembling. Maggie shook her head slowly. "No, but I have a feeling he's not an ordinary man." "And when to?" Noah lifted his head from his mother's arms, his eyes still wet with tears. "Mom, he's a good man, right? He made the bad man go away." Camille held her son tighter and kissed the top of his head. "Yes, sweetheart, he's a good man." But inside her, the questions kept circling, without end. Outside, the snow kept falling, and somewhere in the bitter night, Vincent Moretti sat in his car, staring at the laundromat through the thick snowfall. He did not start the engine. He did not drive away. He only sat there in the dark, thinking of the brown eyes of that woman, shining with tears, thinking of the child's cries as he clung to his mother's leg, and thinking of Derek Brennan's threat. 3 days. He had 3 days to end it all, and Vincent Moretti had never failed. That night, Camille did not sleep. She sat on the worn-out bed, her back against the wall, cold as stone, holding Noah close in her arms. The boy had been asleep for a long time, his breathing soft, though now and then it still broke with a dry, rasping cough. Camille did not dare move, afraid she might wake him. She only sat there, staring into the darkness, listening to the wind whistle through the seams of the window, sealed with strips of tape and old newspaper. The apartment was cold as an ice cellar. The heater had died 2 weeks ago, and Camille did not have the money to fix it. She had used everything she could to keep Noah warm. Old blankets, coats, even the tablecloth. But it still was not enough. The cold kept finding its way in, clinging to skin, sinking into bone. She looked down at her son's sleeping face, cheeks pale, lips faintly bluish from the chill. Her heart tightened with pain. He was only 5 years old. He should not have to endure this. Camille reached for the cardboard box under the bed, the place where she kept everything that mattered. Inside was a stack of papers. Hospital bills piled high, each page printed with numbers so huge she did not know how she would ever pay them. Debt collection letters, the tone growing more threatening each time, and a notice from the hospital, reminding her that Noah needed heart surgery within 2 months, or his condition would worsen beyond saving. $80,000. To Camille, that amount was a mountain she could not climb. She worked 6 nights a week, but her pay was only enough to cover rent and food. Noah's medicine consumed whatever was left. And now, on top of that, there was the $50,000 debt Ryan had left behind, and she did not know what to do. Ryan. Even the name made her shiver. She closed her eyes, and memory surged in like floodwater. The first days after they married, when Ryan had been handsome, gentle, promising her a happy life. Then everything changed. He started drinking, started gambling, started exploding with anger for no reason at all. And then the beatings began. Camille still remembered the first time Ryan hit her. A slap across the face because she dared to ask where he had been all night. She had been stunned, had cried, had believed his apology, but the first slap was only the beginning. After that came punches, kicks, nights when she curled in the corner of the room, blood seeping from her lip, forcing herself not to sob out loud so she would not wake Noah sleeping in his crib. She endured it, because she had nowhere to go, because she was afraid, because she thought it was her fault. Then one night, when Ryan was drunk out of his mind and threatened to teach the kid a lesson because Noah was crying too loudly, Camille knew she could not stay another day. She ran in the night, Noah in her arms, a few coins in her pocket. She did not look back. She never looked back. And now, 3 years later, the ghost of that marriage still chased her. Not in Ryan's shape, but in the shape of the debt he left behind. A debt she was the one carrying. Camille exhaled and set the papers down. Then she reached into the box and took out a small notebook. A pink cover, faded, the corners curled from being opened so many times. It was Noah's notebook, where he wrote and drew his wishes every night before sleep. Camille turned the pages one by one, her vision blurring with tears. The first page held a clumsy drawing of a house with two people standing in front of the door, and the words written in colored pencil, "Me and Mommy in a warm house." The second page showed a big heart with many arrows pointing to it. Beside it were the words, "I want my heart to be fixed so I can run. It's not with manna." The third page was a drawing of a woman smiling, with the words, "I want Mommy to smile like the other mommies." The last page held writing that was more careful, as if the boy had spent a long time thinking, "I want a daddy, but a nice one." Camille closed the notebook, her hands trembling. She could not cry out loud. She was not allowed to cry out loud. Noah was asleep. She did not want her son to wake and see her like this. But the tears still fell, quietly, without stopping. She held Noah tighter and kissed the soft hair on his head. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice thick. "I'm sorry I can't give you a better life. I'm sorry I can't protect you. I'm sorry." Outside, snow kept falling. The wind kept blowing, and the small apartment remained cold, like every other night. But Camille did not know that somewhere in the city, there was a man who also did not sleep, and he was thinking of her. At that same time, 40 floors above the city, Vincent Moretti stood by the penthouse window and looked down at Chicago, drowned in white snow. He had been back here for almost an hour, yet he still had not taken off his coat. The glass of whiskey on the table was untouched. The ice nearly melted away. He was not drinking. He could not. His mind was still in that small laundromat, where a mother held her child and cried in fear, where a thin little boy trembled as he clung to his mother's leg, begging the bad man not to hurt her. A knock sounded at the door. Leo Santini came in, a brown file case in his hand. "You told me to investigate her," Leo said, setting the file case on the table. "I've got everything here." Vincent did not turn around. "Read it to me." "I go." Leo opened the file case and flipped through pages packed with printed information. Camille Ashford, 27 years old, born in the suburbs of Chicago. Her parents died when she was 18, in a car accident. No siblings, no close relatives. Married Ryan Ashford at 22. Had her first son 1 year after that. Leo paused, his voice dropping. Ryan Ashford has a history of domestic violence, alcohol addiction, and gambling. There were at least 3 reports of spousal abuse, but Camille never testified. 3 years ago, she ran away with her son. Ryan did not chase them. He was busy borrowing $50,000 from Derek Brennan to cover gambling debts, then disappeared without a trace, leaving his ex-wife to carry it all. Vincent remained silent, but his hand tightened at his side. Leo went on. Her son, Noah Ashford, 5 years old, congenital heart disease since birth. His condition is getting worse. Doctors say he needs surgery within 2 months. Estimated cost $80,000. She has no insurance, no savings. Her monthly income is only enough to pay rent and buy her son's medication. Leo closed the file case and looked up at his boss. In short, she has nothing. And Brennan is forcing her to repay a debt she never borrowed. Vincent finally turned. He walked to the table, took the file case, and opened it. He scanned the pages, reading each dry line of information about the life of a woman he had only seen a few times. Then he stopped on a photograph of Noah. The child in the picture was smiling, a bright and innocent smile, even though his face was pale from illness. His eyes were wide, a warm brown, looking straight into the camera as if he were looking straight into the viewer's soul. Vincent went still. He had seen those eyes before, 22 years ago, in a dark alley in the slums, when he held his little brother and begged heaven and earth not to take him away. Mateo had eyes like that too, wide, innocent, full of trust, and he too had carried a sick heart, one the world had been too cruel to save. Vincent closed his eyes. He tried to push the memory away, but it poured back in like a flood. Mateo lay in his arms, a small body trembling from cold and from pain. His lips were blue, his breathing thinning, yet he still tried to smile at Vincent. "Big brother, are you cold? Hug me." That was the last thing Mateo said. Then those eyes closed, and Vincent held a body gone cold through the whole night. Not crying, not speaking, only sitting there in the dark and swearing he would never be helpless like that again. He had kept that vow. He had become the strongest, the most feared, the one no one dared to touch. He had built an empire out of blood and tears, but none of it could bring Mateo back. And now, staring into Noah's eyes in that photograph, Vincent felt as if the universe were offering him a second chance. A chance to save a child he had not been able to save 22 years ago. He set the photograph on the table and turned to Leo. "Nullify the debt," Vincent said, his voice dropping to a dangerous octave. "Brennan is operating on my streets without a license. Tell him the Ashford debt is now the property of the Moretti family, and then tell him it's been cancelled. If he wants his $50,000, tell him to come and collect it from me personally." Leo nodded, asking no questions. He had been with Vincent long enough to know there were decisions that did not need explaining. "Anything else?" Leo asked. Vincent looked down at the photograph again. Noah's eyes looked back at him, clear and full of hope. "Don't let her know," Vincent said slowly. "She doesn't need to know where the money came from. She only needs to know no one is threatening her anymore." Leo nodded, then turned and left. Vincent stood alone in the penthouse, vast and empty. He looked out the window, where snow was still falling, whitening the city. He did not know why he was doing this. He was not used to saving people. He was used to destroying. But when he thought of those eyes, Noah's eyes and Mateo's eyes blending into one inside his memory, he knew he had no other choice. This time, he would not let a child die because the world was too cold. Not again. The next morning, when Camille opened her apartment door to go to work, she almost stepped on an envelope lying right at her feet. She stopped, frowning as she looked down. The envelope was white, no sender's name, no address, only one line of neat handwriting on the front. Camille Ashford. She glanced up and down the hallway. No one was there. The stairwell was silent. The other apartment doors were still shut tight, as if the envelope had appeared out of thin air. Camille bent down to pick it up, feeling an unusual weight inside. Her heart began to beat faster. She stepped back into the apartment, closed the door, then opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was money. A lot of money. Crisp new $100 bills, stacked neatly into thick bundles. Camille counted once, then counted again, not believing what she was seeing. $5,000, more than everything she earned in 3 months working at the laundromat, and there was a small slip of paper tucked among the bundles. She pulled it out and read the handwritten words in black ink. "For the boy's medicine. You're not alone. I curing manned." Camille read the sentence again and again, as if afraid that if she blinked it would vanish. For the boy's medicine. Someone knew about Noah. Someone knew about her son's illness. Someone cared enough to send her this money. But who? Her mind went to the stranger in the laundromat, the man who had faced Derek Brennan with a few words and a look, the man who had disappeared into the snow without leaving a name behind. Was it him? But why? She had never met him before that night. She did not know who he was. Why would a stranger help her like this? Camille sank into the battered chair in the kitchen, her hand still clutching the envelope. She felt overwhelmed. She had grown used to carrying everything alone, used to no one helping, used to the world turning its back on her. But now, someone was telling her she was not alone. "You're not alone." Tears rose and spilled down her cheeks, and she did not bother wiping them away. This was the first time in so long that she had cried because of something good. That afternoon, Camille arrived at the laundromat earlier than usual. Maggie was seated behind the counter, her shoulder still wrapped in a bandage from the fall the other night. When she saw Camille come in, she lifted her head, worry filling her eyes. "How are you, honey? Did you get any sleep?" Camille shook her head, then pulled the envelope out and handed it to her. "Do you know where this came from?" "I found it outside my apartment door this morning." Maggie read the words on the slip of paper, then looked at the cash inside. Her old eyes widened in shock. "Lord have mercy. Who sent you this?" "I don't know," Camille said, her voice still unsteady. "No name, no address. I think it might be the man from the other night, the one who drove Brennan away, but I'm not sure." Maggie was quiet for a moment, then slowly shook her head. "I don't know who he is. But honey, maybe there are still angels in this world. Don't ask why. Take it, and thank God." Camille looked down at the money in her hands. $5,000. Enough to buy Noah's medicine for 3 months. Enough for her to breathe again. For the first time after so many sleepless nights, she did not know who had sent her this gift. She did not know why. But Maggie was right. Sometimes, in a life full of darkness, a beam of light appears from the place you least expect. That afternoon, after her shift ended, Camille went straight to the pharmacy. For the first time in months, she did not stand at the counter with trembling hands, counting out coins one by one. For the first time, she could buy Noah's full dose of medicine without cutting her own meals down to nothing. When she returned home, she held the bag of medicine tight to her chest, as if it were treasure. Noah ran out to greet her, his eyes lighting up when he saw his mother home early. "Mom, are you happy?" the boy asked, tilting his head with innocent curiosity. Camille knelt and pulled him into her arms, kissing his cheek. "Yes, sweetheart. Today I'm very happy." And for the first time in a long while, her smile was not something she had to force. It was real. Somewhere in the city, in a penthouse that rose into the sky, Vincent Moretti received a text message from Leo. "Sent." She got it. He did not reply. He only looked out the window, where the sunset was staining the Chicago sky red, and for the first time in 22 years, he felt the weight in his chest ease. Just a little. 2 days later, Vincent went back to the laundromat. He did not know why he came. The job was done. The debt had been erased. The money for medicine had been delivered. He had no reason to return to this place, and yet his feet still carried him here, as if an invisible thread were pulling him back toward that small laundromat, with its flickering lights and the smell of cheap soap. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The familiar wind chime rang, a soft clinking sound. Inside, everything was the same. The old washing machines rumbled on. Maggie sat behind the counter reading a newspaper, and Camille was folding clothes in the corner, her brown hair tied up in a hurry, exposing the slender line of her neck. Vincent chose the familiar chair near the window and sat down. He pretended to look outside, where the snow had stopped falling but still lay white on the sidewalk, but his eyes kept drifting back to Camille and her son. Then he heard small footsteps running toward him. "Sir, you came back." Vincent turned and saw Noah rushing toward him, his face bright as the sun after a storm. The boy no longer looked afraid, not like he had that night. His brown eyes shone with the pure joy only a child can hold. "Noah, don't bother the customer," Camille called after him. But the boy was already standing in front of Vincent. "I missed you," Noah said, slightly out of breath from running. "You're the one who made the bad man go away, right? Mommy says you're a good man." "Werely were." Vincent did not know what to say. He looked down at the child staring up at him with complete trust, and something tightened in his throat. "I have a gift for you," Noah said, and held out a piece of paper folded carefully in half. "I drew it for you. Mommy says you have to say thank you to people who help you." Vincent reached out and took the paper. When he unfolded it, he saw a picture drawn in colored pencils. The lines were clumsy, but full of feeling. In the drawing there were 2 people, a tall man in black standing beside a small child in blue. They were holding hands. Above them was a bright yellow sun, and in the lower corner, in the unsteady handwriting of a 5-year-old, were the words, "Thank you for helping Mommy." Vincent's hand trembled slightly. He stared at the drawing, at that simple image made by a child, and it felt as if someone had driven a blade into his chest, not with pain, with something else, something he had not felt in 22 years. Mateo had drawn pictures for him too, clumsy little drawings with cheap colored pencils Vincent had stolen from a convenience store. Mateo drew the 2 of them in a big house, with a yard and a dog. "When you're rich, we'll live here, okay?" Mateo had said. But Mateo never got the chance to live in that house. "Do you like it?" Noah asked, worry in his voice. "Mommy says I draw really well." 18-2. Vincent lifted his head, swallowing down the surge of feeling. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "It's the most beautiful picture I've ever received." Noah's smile spread wide, bright as sunlight breaking through clouds. The boy ran back to his mother, thrilled to tell her that the man liked his picture. A few minutes later, Camille came over to Vincent, a steaming cup of coffee in her hand. "I don't know what to say," she said, her voice gentle but sincere. "You helped us that night. I don't have anything to repay you, but at least please accept this cup of coffee." Vincent looked up at her, into brown eyes still shadowed by sleeplessness, but carrying less fear now. He gave a small nod and took the coffee. "Thank you," he said. Camille smiled, a fragile smile, but real. She started to turn away, when Noah ran over and tugged at her hand. "Mom, tell him. Tell him about last night." Camille stopped, her cheeks coloring. "Noah, there's nothing to tell." But Noah had already turned back to Vincent, his eyes wide. "Last night, Mommy cried all night, but Mommy said it was happy crying. Mommy said an angel sent money so I could buy medicine. Do you know that angel?" Vincent felt his heart tighten. Camille hurriedly pulled Noah away, her face burning with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, sir. He's small. He doesn't know what he's saying." But before she turned, her eyes met Vincent's. For a brief moment, something passed between them. Not words, not questions. only a silence in which two souls seemed to touch, without needing language. Then Camille turned away, leading Noah back to the corner. Vincent remained alone, the warm coffee in his hand, Noah's drawing resting on his lap. He looked down at the crooked words again. "Thank you for helping Mommy." And for the first time in 22 years, Vincent Moretti did not feel entirely like a monster. Maybe, deep under the ice, there was still some part of a man, a part that a 5-year-old child, with a clumsy drawing, had been able to see, when the whole world saw only darkness. That night, Vincent was sitting in the penthouse when Leo walked in, his face tighter than usual. "Boss, we have a problem," Leo said, his voice heavy. "Brennan will not stop. He is trying to find out who erased Camille Ashford's debt, and he has ordered his men to watch the child." Vincent had a glass of whiskey in his hand, but at the word child, his grip tightened until his knuckles turned white. He set the glass down on the table with a dry, hard sound. "Say that again." His voice was low, cold as ice. Leo swallowed. He had followed Vincent for years, had watched his boss handle countless enemies without the slightest flinch, but he had never seen Vincent's eyes like this. Not the familiar coldness, something else, a smoldering fury, poised to erupt. This afternoon, 2 of Brennan's guys showed up at the boys' kindergarten. They stood outside the gate taking pictures. The teacher noticed and called Camille. She ran over and took her son home. Vincent shot to his feet, the chair skidding back with a loud scrape. He said nothing. He went straight to the window, both hands clenched into fists. His whole body trembled, not from cold, but from the rage boiling through his veins. The child. Brennan dared to target the child. Noah's face rose in Vincent's mind. The clear brown eyes, the innocent smile, the clumsy drawing with the words, "Thank you for helping Mommy." And then that image bled into the memory of Mateo, his little brother, 8 years old, lying motionless in Vincent's arms in a freezing dark alley. Vincent turned back. His eyes were no longer that cold gray. They had gone black, deep and terrifying, like a bottomless pit. "Call the team," he said. Each word fell with the weight of a hammer. "All of them, right now." Leo nodded, not daring to ask anything more. He knew that when Vincent Moretti spoke in that voice, nothing could stand in the way. An hour later, 3 black cars pulled up in front of an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the south side. This was Derek Brennan's den, where he ran his loan shark empire and other illegal operations. Outside, 2 guards stood smoking, unaware of the storm about to hit. The car doors opened. Vincent stepped out, his black coat snapping in the cold wind. Behind him were Leo and 6 other men, all dressed in black, faces hard as stone. The 2 guards saw them coming and hurried to draw their guns. But before they could react, 2 muffled shots cracked the air. They dropped without a sound. Vincent stepped over their bodies as if stepping over trash and shoved the heavy iron door wide open. Inside, Derek Brennan sat behind a large wooden desk, with 4 armed men around him. When the door burst open, he looked up, his expression shifting from surprise to anger. "What the hell?" he started, rising fast, his hand moving toward his gun. But Vincent stepped into the light, and when the overhead lamps hit his face, Derek froze. He recognized him. Everyone in Chicago's underworld knew that face. The icy gray eyes, the features sharp as a blade, the stare that could freeze blood in a man's veins. Vincent Moretti, the South Side boss, the ruler of the dark. "You," Derek stammered, the color draining from his face. "You are—" "I am Vincent Moretti," Vincent said, his voice steady and low, yet each word carried the weight of death. "And you are standing on my ground." Derek's 4 men looked at one another, then at Vincent's crew. They knew what they were facing. One by one, they set their guns on the floor and backed away. Derek stood alone in the middle of the room, his face twisted by fear and anger. He had never imagined that the man in the laundromat that night was Vincent Moretti. He had never imagined he had challenged the most powerful man in Chicago without even knowing it. Vincent walked closer, step by step, slow but crushing with pressure. He stopped less than a pace away and looked Derek straight in the eyes. "Camille Ashford and the child are under my protection," he said, his voice cold as ice. "You sent people to watch the boy. You threatened his mother. You crossed the one line I never forgive." Derek tried to hold on to his toughness. "That is business. That woman owes me." Vincent's hand shot out. He grabbed Derek by the collar and hauled him in close. His face was only inches away, his gray eyes like 2 deep pits of ice without a bottom. "Her debt has been erased." "By me," Vincent snarled. "And if you ever touch them again, even a single hair, I will not kill you. I will take everything you have. Your money, your men, your territory, your name. I will let you live, but you will wish you were dead." He released Derek and shoved him down. Derek hit the floor, gasping, staring up at Vincent with fear in his eyes. But deep inside that fear, there was still a thin ember of hatred, burning. "I understand," Derek said, his voice shaking. "I will not touch them again." Vincent stared at him for a long time, then turned and walked out. But at the doorway, he stopped. "I will have people watching you," he said without looking back. "If you do anything that displeases me, you will not get a second chance." Then he vanished into the night, leaving Derek on the cold floor, trembling with fear and with hatred that seethed and boiled beneath his skin. He would not forget this night, and he would not forgive it. Camille had just stepped up to the door when a hand blocked her path. Leo Santini stood there, tall and threatening in a black suit. His eyes took Camille in with undisguised surprise, as if he could not believe that a thin woman in a worn coat would dare to show up here. "You should not be here," Leo said, his voice cold and final. "Go home." Camille did not step back. She lifted her chin and looked straight into the eyes of the man, nearly a head taller than she was, fighting to keep her voice from shaking. "I need to see Mr. Moretti," Leo frowned. "He does not see anyone without an appointment, especially not strangers." "I am not a stranger," Camille said. "He knows me, and I know what he has done for me. I just need to speak with him, just once." Leo watched her for a long moment, as if weighing her. Then he pulled out his phone, turned away, and said something Camille could not make out. A few seconds later he turned back, his face still blank. "Follow me." Camille stepped inside, her heart pounding hard against her ribs. The Black Rose was more luxurious than anywhere she had ever set foot. Polished wooden floors, crystal chandeliers, an oak bar lined with expensive bottles arranged in perfect rows. Soft jazz drifted from somewhere, blending with the low murmur of conversation and laughter from guests in tailored suits and evening gowns. Leo led her through the crowd, up a spiral wooden staircase, to a closed door at the end of a hallway. He knocked twice, then pushed it open. "She is here," Leo said, then stepped aside. Camille walked in and saw Vincent standing by the window, his back to her. The room was dark, lit only by the city glow filtering through the glass. He did not turn when she entered. He simply stood there in silence, like a statue in shadow. "Leave us," Vincent said, his voice low and even. "Let us talk alone." Leo nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Silence stretched on. Camille stood in the middle of the room, not knowing what to say first. On the way here she had rehearsed so many questions, but now, facing him, every word seemed to evaporate from her mind. At last, Vincent turned. His gray eyes met her brown ones, and in that moment Camille felt as if he could see straight through her. "You dared to come here?" he said, not a question, a statement. There was something strange in his tone, perhaps surprise, perhaps respect. Camille drew a slow breath. "I need to know why." "Why what?" "Why did you help me?" she asked, without circling around it. "You erased the debt. You sent the money. You threatened Derek Brennan. You protected my son. Why? Who am I that you would do all of that?" Vincent did not answer right away. He went to the table and poured a glass of whiskey, but he did not drink. He only stood there, staring down at the amber liquid, as if searching for an answer inside it. "There are things that do not need repayment," he said at last, his voice softer than usual. Camille shook her head. "In your world, everything has a price. I know that. You are Vincent Moretti. You do not do anything without a reason." Vincent lifted his gaze to her, his expression hard to read. She was not afraid. She did not lower her head. She looked straight into his eyes and demanded an answer, as if he were not the most powerful man in Chicago, as if he were only an ordinary man. And that surprised Vincent. No one dared to look at him like that. No one dared to speak to him like that. People feared him, or wanted to use him, or both. But this woman, she only wanted to understand. "Not always," he said, his voice lower now. "Not everything has a price. There are things a person does because they cannot not do them." Camille studied him, and for the first time she saw something else inside those cold gray eyes. Not cruelty, not indifference, but pain. Deep and old, like a wound that had never healed. "You are running from something," she said. "Not a question, but understanding. You are helping me not because of me, but because of someone else. Someone you could not save." Vincent went still. For the first time in 22 years, someone had seen through the ice he had built around himself. Not with force, not with schemes. With the pure understanding of someone who had also known pain. He did not answer. He could not. Camille gave a small nod, as if she understood now. "Thank you," she said, her voice gentle. "Whatever the reason is, thank you for saving us." Then she turned and walked out, leaving Vincent alone in the dark room. He watched her until the door closed, and for the first time in his life, Vincent Moretti felt seen, truly seen. As Camille stepped off the staircase of the Black Rose, the phone in her coat pocket began to vibrate. She pulled it out, looked at the screen, and saw the number of Noah's kindergarten. Her heart tightened. The school never called at this hour unless something was wrong. She pressed the answer button, her hand shaking beyond control. "Miss Ashford?" The teacher's voice came through, thick with worry. "You need to come right away. Noah is struggling to breathe. We have called an ambulance, but his condition is not stable. He keeps calling your name." Camille's world collapsed. She could not hear anything else. Not the soft jazz from the bar, not the low laughter of the guests, only the frantic pounding of her own heart in her ears, and the image of Noah, her small boy, fighting for air while she was miles away. She ran outside, not even sure where she was going. She had no car, she had no money for a taxi. The nearest bus stop was 2 blocks away, and at this hour the buses came infrequently. She did not know what to do. She stood on the snow-covered sidewalk, tears spilling down her cheeks, her whole body trembling with panic. Then a voice rose behind her. "What happened?" Camille turned and saw Vincent standing there, his black coat whipping in the cold wind. He had followed her outside. His gray eyes looked at her with something unusual in them now, no longer as cold as before. "Noah," Camille said, her voice breaking. "My son, he cannot breathe. I need to get to the school right now, but I do not have a car. I do not know what to do." Vincent said nothing. He turned to Leo, who was standing nearby, and gave a single nod. Leo ran at once, and only seconds later, a black car rolled up in front of them. "Get in," Vincent said, opening the door for Camille. "I will drive." Camille did not have time to think. She jumped into the car, and before she could even fasten her seatbelt, Vincent was in the driver's seat and pressing the accelerator. The car tore into the night like a bullet. The streets of Chicago streamed past the window in blurred bands of light. Vincent drove at a terrifying speed, cutting through intersections, running red lights, turning the wheel like a professional racer. But his hands on the steering wheel were perfectly steady, his face calm, as if this were nothing more than an ordinary drive. Camille sat beside him, both hands clenched around the edge of the seat, her whole body shaking. She could not breathe, she could not think. Her mind held only one picture. Noah gasping in a classroom, lips turning blue, eyes wide with fear, calling for his mother while his mother was not there. "Breathe." Vincent's voice came through, low and steady, slicing cleanly through her panic. Camille turned to look at him, tears blurring her vision. "Your child needs you strong," he said, his eyes still fixed on the road. "If you fall apart, who will be beside him? Breathe, slowly, in, out." He's pressed. Camille obeyed, forcing control over the chaotic rhythm in her chest. In, out, in, out. Little by little, the panic eased, even though the fear remained, heavy and raw. She looked at Vincent, at the sharp, cold cut of his face under the streetlights that slid past, and for the first time she saw something else beneath the ice. He was not only driving, he was racing time itself. For her, for Noah, for a child he had met only a few times. Why? She still did not understand, but right now, she did not need to understand. She only knew that in this freezing, snowbound night, she was not alone anymore. 15 minutes later, the car stopped in front of the hospital gates. Camille threw herself out before it had fully stopped, running inside as if she could fly. Vincent followed, his stride long and fast. In the emergency room, Noah lay on a hospital bed, an oxygen mask covering his face, his small body trembling. The heart monitor beeped in a steady rhythm, but the boy's eyes were squeezed shut, his face pale as paper. Camille rushed to his side, tears pouring freely. She took Noah's little hand, kissed each finger, cold to the touch. "I am here, sweetheart. I am here." Noah opened his eyes. The warm brown was clouded with exhaustion, but when he saw his mother, his lips lifted into a weak smile. "Mom," he whispered through the oxygen mask. "I was so scared. I called you, and you were not here." "Despirita," Camille sobbed, holding her son close. I am sorry, baby. I am here now. I am not going anywhere." A doctor stepped closer, serious, but not overly tense. "Miss Ashford, he is stable now. We have the situation under control, But you need to talk with me about his condition. This is not the first time, and it will not be the last if there is no surgical intervention." Camille nodded, wiping at her tears. She knew that. She knew it better than anyone. In the back of the room, Vincent stood in silence, half swallowed by shadow, watching what unfolded. He watched Camille hold her child and cry. He watched Noah, frail on the hospital bed, and in that moment, he saw himself again, 22 years ago, holding Matteo in helpless arms. But this time would be different. This time, he would not let a child die because the world was too cruel. Not again. Vincent did not go into the hospital room. He stood out in the hallway, his back against the cold white wall, looking through the glass into the room where Camille sat beside Noah's bed. He did not belong in that world. A world of mothers and children, of warmth and love. He was only a ghost at the edge of it, watching from a distance what he could never touch. Noah had fallen asleep, his breathing more even now with the help of the machine. In sleep, his face looked peaceful, as if all the pain and fear had stepped away for a while. Camille sat close, her hand wrapped tightly around her son's small hand, her head bowed against the edge of the bed. Footsteps echoed in the empty hallway. Dr. Rachel Goldstein, a middle-aged woman with silver hair and intelligent eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses, came to a stop beside Vincent. "Are you family?" she asked. Vincent shook his head. "No, just someone they know." Dr. Goldstein studied him for a moment, then nodded. She stepped into the room and gently touched Camille's shoulder. The young woman startled awake, eyes reddened from crying and lack of sleep. "Miss Ashford, we need to talk," Dr. Goldstein said, her tone gentle but firm. "About Noah's condition." Camille nodded and rose, following the doctor out into the hallway. She paused when she saw Vincent still standing there, but she did not speak. She only looked at him for a brief moment, then turned back to the doctor. Dr. Goldstein opened the folder in her hands, her voice dropping. "Noah's heart condition is getting worse faster than we expected. The breathing crisis tonight is a sign his heart is under too much strain. If we do not intervene with surgery within 2 months, I cannot guarantee anything." Camille felt her legs weaken. "The surgery, how much will it cost?" Dr. Goldstein looked at her with deep sympathy. "With how complex Noah's case is, the estimated cost is around $80,000. That includes the surgery, post-operative care, and the specialized medications. $80,000. The number hit Camille like a fist to the chest. She worked 6 nights a week and earned less than $2,000 a month. She checked her mental ledger, but the numbers were devastating. After years of scraping by and paying for Noah's previous treatments, her savings account held less than $800. It was a drop of water in an ocean of debt, money she had fought to set aside over 3 years. 800 against 80,000. She was short $72,000. An impossible number, a mountain she could not climb. "I understand this is a heavy burden," Dr. Goldstein said. "The hospital has financial assistance programs for families in hardship. We can help you look for funding, charitable foundations." Camille could not hear anymore. Her mind spun. She nodded like a machine, thanked the doctor, and watched her walk away through the haze of tears. When Dr. Goldstein disappeared around the corner of the hall, Camille folded in on herself. She leaned back against the wall and slid down to the freezing floor. Her knees drew up to her chest, both arms wrapped around her head, and she cried. Not the quiet, contained crying she had tried so hard to keep inside, but loud, broken sobs, the sound of a mother who had tried too long and still was not enough. She had done everything she could. She had worked until her body gave out. She had skipped meals to save money for her child's medicine. She had endured, fought, refused to quit, but it still was not enough. It would never be enough. Her son would die because she did not have enough money. The thought tore her apart from the inside. Then she felt warmth on her shoulder. Camille lifted her head, tears blurring everything. Vincent stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. He did not speak, no empty comfort, no careless promise. He only stood there, silent, steady as a mountain in a storm. And somehow, his presence was enough to make the pain ease, just a little. She did not understand why he was still here. She did not understand why he cared. But right now she did not need to understand. She only needed to know that someone was standing beside her in the darkest moment of her life. For the first time in 3 years, Camille did not feel alone. She did not try to hide her tears. She did not try to be strong. She only sat there and cried, letting the pain pour out, feeling the warmth of that hand on her shoulder. Vincent looked down at the woman collapsed at his feet, and inside his chest, something began to melt. He did not know how to comfort anyone. He was not used to caring about anyone, but he knew he could not leave. Not now. Outside the hospital window, snow was still falling, covering the city in silence. And in the empty hallway, two broken souls leaned toward each other, needing no words at all. A week passed. Camille lived in worry and exhaustion. She still went to work at the laundromat every night. She still cared for Noah every day. She still tried to find a way to borrow money from every possible source. She called charitable funds, medical aid organizations, even banks she knew would refuse her. But nowhere could help her with enough money. $80,000 remained a mountain she could not climb. Noah had been discharged from the hospital, but he was still fragile. He did not run and play the way he used to. He spent most of his time lying in bed, or sitting in the corner drawing, coughing now and then, and needing the nebulizer. Every time Camille looked at him, she felt as if someone were squeezing her heart in a fist. Then one afternoon, as Camille was folding clothes at the laundromat, her phone rang. The hospital. Her heart tightened. She snatched it up, her hand shaking beyond control. Every time the hospital called, she feared bad news. "Miss Ashford?" Dr. Goldstein's voice came through the line. "Yes, it's me," Camille said, her throat rough. "Is something wrong with Noah?" "No, nothing bad," Dr. Goldstein said, and there was something in her tone Camille could not quite name. "Actually, I'm calling with good news. Noah's surgical costs have been paid, all of it." Camille went still. She thought she had heard wrong. "I'm sorry, doctor, what did you just say?" "The surgical costs," Dr. Goldstein repeated, her voice warmer now. $80,000. Paid in full this morning. We can schedule Noah's surgery for next week." Camille felt her legs give way. She had to grip the counter to keep from falling. Her mind reeled. $80,000. Who could pay that? Who had done this? Who? Who paid it? She asked, her voice trembling. Was it some charity fund? Dr. Goldstein was silent for a moment. It was not a charity fund. The person transferred the money directly to the hospital account, and that person requested to remain anonymous. "But," Camille stammered, "I need to know. I need to thank them." "I understand," Dr. Goldstein said gently, "but the person was very clear they do not want to be identified. They only left a message for you." "What message?" Dr. Goldstein read slowly, word by word. "Every child deserves a chance to run. Every child deserves a chance to run." Camille lowered the phone. Tears rose and spilled down her cheeks, and she did not bother wiping them away. She knew. She knew immediately who had done this. No one else. Only one man. Vincent Moretti, the man with eyes cold as ice, yet who had stood beside her in the hospital hallway. The man who had driven like a madman to get her to her child. The man who had looked into her eyes and seen the pain she tried to hide. The man who carried an old wound, the loss of a little brother he could not save. Every child deserves a chance to run. Camille understood at once. It was not only a message to her, it was a message to Matteo, to the child Vincent had lost, to every child who never got the chance to grow up. She wanted to run to him. She wanted to say thank you. She wanted him to know what this gift meant, to her, to Noah, to their lives, but she did not go, because she understood. She understood that Vincent did not need thanks. He had not done this to be recognized. He had done it because he had to, because somewhere inside his frozen heart, there was still a small part of him that longed to redeem something he had lost long ago. Camille stood in the laundromat, tears still falling, but her lips had curved into a smile. Her son would have surgery. Her son would live. Her son would have the chance to run and play like other children. And it was all because of a man the world called a monster. But Camille knew the truth. Beneath the ice, there was still a heart that had once been shattered, and now was trying to heal itself by saving someone else. The day of the surgery came faster than Camille expected. That morning, she woke before dawn. She bathed Noah, dressed him in the warmest clothes he owned. Noah did not understand everything that was happening. He only knew that today he would go to the hospital, and when he woke up, his heart would be stronger. He held his mother's hand tightly the whole way, his big brown eyes lifted to her with absolute trust. When they arrived at the hospital, the nurses were ready. Noah was taken into the pre-op area, dressed in a pale blue hospital gown that hung too large on his small frame. Camille held him one last time before the bed was rolled toward the operating room. "Mom," Noah asked, his voice tiny. "You'll stay here and wait for me, right?" Camille forced back her tears and kissed his forehead. "I'll be right here. When you wake up, I'll be the first person you see." The operating room doors closed, and Camille collapsed into a plastic chair in the hallway, her whole body trembling. She did not know how long she would wait. Dr. Goldstein had said the surgery was complex, that it could take 5 to 6 hours. 6 hours, 360 minutes. Each minute felt like a year. Camille sat there, her hands clenched together until her knuckles blanched, her eyes fixed on the operating room doors, as if looking away for even a moment would invite something terrible. Then she heard footsteps. She lifted her head and saw Vincent walking toward her. He wore his black coat as always, his face still cold, unreadable. He did not speak. He only sat down in the chair beside hers, leaving just enough space between them. Camille looked at him, wanting to say something, but no words came. He had come. He did not have to, but he came anyway. That meant more than anything she could have said. They sat in silence for a long time. 1 hour, 2 hours. Time moved so slowly that Camille felt as if she were sinking into a lake of thick water. Then, as if she could not bear the silence any longer, she began to speak. "I met Ryan when I was 19, she said, her voice soft, far away. He was handsome, gentle. He said the things I wanted to hear. I thought I had found someone who would stay with me forever." Vincent said nothing. He only listened. "He started hitting me after we'd been married for 6 months," Camille went on, her eyes lowered to the floor. "At first it was just slaps, then punches, then kicks. I endured it because I thought it was my fault, because I had no one else, because I was afraid." She drew a deep breath. "When I got pregnant with Noah, I thought everything would change, but it didn't. He kept hitting me, even worse than before. One night, when Noah was 2, Ryan got drunk and threatened to hit our child. That night, I ran. I took my son and I left. I brought nothing with me, only my boy." Camille turned to look at Vincent. "Do you think I was foolish for staying so long?" And Vincent looked at her, his gray eyes deep. "No," he said, his voice low. "I think you were strong, because you finally left." Silence for a moment. Then Vincent spoke, his voice softer than usual, as if he were speaking to himself. "I grew up in an orphanage. My parents died when I was too young to remember their faces. I had a little brother named Mateo. He had congenital heart disease, like Noah." Camille watched him, hardly breathing. "I did everything to keep him alive," Vincent continued. "Stealing, pickpocketing, working for bad people. But it wasn't enough. One winter night, he had an attack in a dark alley. I held him and watched him die in my arms. He was 8 years old. His voice did not shake, but Camille could see the pain in his eyes. Pain carried for 22 years, still fresh as yesterday. After that night, I swore I would never be helpless again," Vincent said. "I became what people call a monster. But no matter how much money, how much power, I still could not bring Mateo back." Camille reached out and gently placed her hand over his. Vincent looked down, but he did not pull away. They sat like that, in silence, waiting. 3 hours, 4 hours, 5. Then the operating room doors opened. Dr. Goldstein stepped out, pulling her mask down. Her face was tired, but her eyes were bright. "The surgery was a success," she said. "Noah is very strong. He will make a full recovery. I don't forbade it." Camille sprang to her feet, tears pouring. She did not think, did not control herself. She turned and threw her arms around Vincent, sobbing against his chest. Vincent stood still, his whole body rigid. He was not used to this. He was not used to closeness, to the warmth of another person. For 22 years, he had not let anyone touch him like this. But then, slowly, his hands rose, and he held Camille. He held her gently, carefully, as if afraid she would shatter if he held her too tightly. And in that moment, in the quiet hospital hallway, 2 broken people found each other. No words were needed, only presence. And for the first time in 22 years, Vincent Moretti felt that he was not alone anymore. Rumors spread faster than wildfire. In Chicago's underworld, nothing stays secret. Within a few days, everyone knew that Vincent Moretti, the coldest and most ruthless boss in the city, was protecting a single mother and her sick little boy. People whispered in dim bars, in damp alleyways, in hushed meetings between gangs. Moretti had a weakness. For the first time in 22 years, the iron-hard kingpin had something he cared about. Derek Brennan heard the rumor and laughed loudly in the miserable room where he was hiding. After the confrontation with Vincent, he had lost everything. Territory, men, money, reputation. He became someone no one bothered to look at, living in the shadows like a sewer rat, but the fire of hatred inside him had never gone out. And now, he had a chance for revenge. He contacted men from outside Chicago, hired guns who belonged to no crew, who did not fear the name Moretti. He poured in every dollar he had left. borrowed from other loan sharks, to hire 2 professional assassins. The target was Camille Ashford and her son, not to kill, to send a message, to show Vincent Moretti that no one was allowed to humiliate Derek Brennan without paying for it. Meanwhile, Camille knew nothing about the storm that was coming. 2 weeks after the surgery, Noah was discharged. He was still weak, the incision on his chest still wrapped in bandages, but his brown eyes shone with a new kind of life. Dr. Goldstein said he was recovering better than expected, and with a few more weeks of rest, Noah would be able to run and play like any other child. Camille held her son on the way home, her happiness spilling over. For the first time in years, she dared to think about the future, a future where Noah was healthy, where she no longer had to lie awake all night with fear, where they could live something close to a normal life. That day passed in peace. Maggie came to visit, carrying a homemade apple pie. Noah sat on the bed drawing pictures, giggling now and then when his mother kissed his cheek. Camille cooked the first dinner since Noah came home, a pot of hot chicken soup, the smell filling their small apartment. Night fell. Camille tucked Noah into bed and pulled the blanket up carefully. She sat beside him and sang a lullaby, the song her mother used to sing to her long ago. Noah closed his eyes, his little mouth still curved in a satisfied smile. When he was asleep, Camille slipped quietly into the living room. She sat down, took out her phone, and thought about sending Vincent another message of thanks. But she did not know what to write. Every thank you felt too small beside what he had done. Then she heard a sound. Heavy footsteps out in the hallway. Not a neighbor. Too fast, too deliberate. Camille's heart clenched. She stood, moved toward the door, and looked through the peephole. 2 figures in black stood outside her apartment. One of them held something that looked like a crowbar. Camille backed away, her shaking hand searching for her phone. She had to call the police. She had to call someone, but she did not have time. The door exploded inward with a horrifying crash. Wood splintered and flew. 2 men stepped into the apartment, faces cold and empty. One held a gun, the other held a knife. Camille screamed and ran for Noah's bedroom. She rushed inside, slammed the door, and shoved the lock into place. But she knew the thin door could not stop anyone. Noah was awake now, his brown eyes wide with fear. "Mom, what's happening?" Camille pulled him into her arms and dragged him to the farthest corner of the room. She put her body in front of him, her back against the wall, both arms wrapped around him as if she could shield him from the entire world. The kick hit the door. Once, twice. The third time, the bedroom door flew open. The 2 attackers stepped in, the light from the living room cutting across their hard faces. One of them raised the gun and aimed it at Camille and Noah. "Please don't hurt him," Camille said, her voice trembling but determined. She looked straight into the gunman's eyes, tears running down her cheeks, but she would not collapse. "He's all I have left, please. My son just had surgery. His wound hasn't even healed yet. Do whatever you want to me, but don't touch my child." The gunman looked at her, his face showing nothing. "We got paid," he said, his voice cold as ice. "Nothing personal, just a job." Noah sobbed in his mother's arms, his small body shaking. He did not understand what was happening. He only knew his mother was afraid, and bad men were threatening them. Camille held him tighter, bracing for the worst. She did not know that a few miles away, in a penthouse that rose above the city, Vincent Moretti's phone was ringing. And when he received Leo's message, the blood in his veins turned to ice. "Her apartment is under attack. 2 unknown suspects, not ours." Vincent surged out the door before Leo could say another word. He would not lose anyone else. Not this time. Vincent drove as if hell itself were chasing him. The streets of Chicago streaked past the windows like blurred bands of light. He ran red lights, tore through intersections, cut hard and wild between the late-night traffic. His hands crushed the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. His jaw was locked tight. His eyes stayed fixed on the road ahead. In his mind, memory and the present fused together. He saw Mateo, 8 years old, lying in a cold, dark alley, his breath thinning, his brown eyes slowly closing. He saw himself, 14, holding his little brother and begging heaven and earth not to take him. But no one heard. No one came. And Mateo died in his arms, cold and alone. No, not this time. Vincent pressed the accelerator harder, the engine roaring like the scream of a wounded animal. He reached Camille's apartment in less than 10 minutes, a distance that should have taken 3 times longer. He slammed the brakes. The car stopped with a sharp, shrieking skid. Without even killing the engine, he hurled himself out and ran up the stairs 3 steps at a time. The apartment door had been kicked in. Splintered wood littered the floor. Inside, The sickly yellow light fell on a scene that made Vincent's blood boil. 2 attackers stood in the living room. One held a gun aimed toward the bedroom. Camille was on her knees in the corner, Noah in her arms, her body shielding her child like a shield made of bone and flesh. Vincent did not say a word. He hit the room like a storm. The gunman turned, but too late. Vincent was already on him, his fist snapping out to smash the man's wrist. The gun clattered to the floor. Before the man could react, Vincent drove a punch into his face. Then another, until the attacker dropped, unconscious on the wood. The second man lunged in with the knife. Vincent shifted aside, but not fast enough. The blade cut across his arm. Blood spilled, soaking his sleeve. But Vincent did not stop. The pain only made him more savage. He caught the attacker's wrist, twisted hard until bone cracked with a sickening sound. The man screamed and dropped the knife, and Vincent finished it with a brutal slam of the attacker's head into the wall. Both men lay motionless on the floor. Vincent stood there, breathing hard, blood dripping from the wound in his arm onto the wooden planks. The room was silent now, broken only by his ragged breath and Noah's small crying from the corner. Then small feet ran toward him. "Uncle Vincent, Uncle Vincent." Noah slipped free of his mother's arms and stumbled toward Vincent, legs shaking. The boy looked up at him. Brown eyes flooded with tears, then looked down at the blood on Vincent's arm. "You're bleeding," Noah said, his voice thick with sobs. "Does it hurt? Are you okay?" Vincent looked down at the child, into those wide brown eyes, and suddenly the strength drained out of him. He dropped to his knees and held Noah. He gathered the boy into his arms, careful to avoid the incision on Noah's chest, and something inside Vincent broke open. 22 years. 22 years of locking everything away. 22 years of building a wall of ice around his heart. But now, holding this small child in his arms, that wall collapsed. Tears slid down Vincent's face. For the first time in 22 years, he cried. He cried for Mateo, the little brother he could not save. He cried for the 14-year-old orphan, holding his brother in a dark alley and swearing he would never be helpless again. He cried for all the years of loneliness, all the cold, all the frozen silence, and he cried with relief. Because this time, he had made it in time. This time, the child was still alive in his arms. Camille rose from the corner, tears running down her cheeks too. She came closer, sank to her knees beside them, and wrapped her arms around both of them. They stayed that way for a long time, 3 broken people leaning into one another in the wreckage of a ruined room. 3 days later, Derek Brennan vanished from the face of the earth. No one killed him. Vincent kept his promise. But what he did was worse than death. He took everything. Money, men, connections, identity. Brennan was driven out of Chicago, forbidden to set foot in any major city in the United States. Everyone he had ever known turned their backs. Every door slammed shut in his face. Derek Brennan became no one, a ghost living in fear, never knowing when Vincent Moretti would change his mind and finally end him. It was the worst punishment Vincent could imagine, not death, living in hell every day. A year later, winter came again, but this time, everything was different. The small, run-down apartment on the south side had become a distant memory. Camille and Noah now lived in a warm home in a quieter neighborhood, where the heater worked, the windows kept out the wind, and morning sunlight poured into the living room every day. On the walls hung Noah's clumsy drawings, new ones with more color, more smiles, and always 3 figures standing side by side. Noah was 6 years old now. He was no longer the pale, fragile child curled up in the corner of the laundromat. The scar on his chest had healed. His heart beat strong, and his legs never stopped moving. He ran to school, ran back home, ran out to the park to play with friends. Every time Camille saw him running, she smiled and remembered the words from his old wish notebook. "I want my heart to be fixed so I can run." That wish had come true. Camille no longer worked at the laundromat. She had completed a medical assistant program and now worked at a community clinic on the south side, helping women and children who were struggling the way she once had. Every day, she looked into their eyes and saw herself from a year ago, frightened, desperate, alone. And she told them what someone had once told her. "You're not alone." Vincent was still Vincent, the kingpin of Chicago's underworld. But he was different now, less cold, less distant, and he had done something no one in the underworld expected. He founded a charity called Mateo's Hope, dedicated to covering medical costs for children born with congenital heart disease in poor families. No one knew who Mateo was. Only Vincent, Camille, and now Noah understood the true meaning of that name. It was Vincent's way of making peace with the past, It was how he turned pain into hope for someone else. On Christmas night that year, snow fell softly outside the window. Camille and Noah were decorating a small tree in the living room when the doorbell rang. Noah ran to open it, and his face lit up when he saw who was standing there. "Uncle Vincent," the boy shouted, throwing himself around the legs of the tall man at the door. Vincent stepped inside, snow still clinging to the shoulders of his familiar black coat. In his hand was a large gift bag. He set it down, knelt to Noah's level, and pulled out the first present, a deep blue winter coat, warm and perfectly sized for the boy. "So you will never be cold again," Vincent said, his voice gentle in a way he would not have believed possible a year earlier. Noah tried it on, spun around to show his mother, grinning from ear to ear. "I love it. Thank you, Uncle Vincent." Then Vincent rose and turned to Camille. She stood there, brown hair loose over her shoulders, hazel eyes shining in the Christmas lights. She was more beautiful than ever, not because of makeup or fine clothes, but because peace had returned to her face, because her smile no longer had to be forced. Vincent reached into his coat and took out a small box wrapped in black velvet. He opened it. Inside was a simple silver ring, not a sparkling diamond, not expensive gold, just a thin band of silver with words engraved on the inside. "I will always be here." "This is not a wedding ring," Vincent said, his voice low and sincere. "This is a promise. I do not know what the future will be. I do not know if I deserve you and Noah. But I know one thing. I will always be here, whenever you need me, whatever happens." Camille looked at the ring, then up at Vincent. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but they were tears of joy. She held out her hand and let him slide the ring onto her finger. "I don't need you to be perfect," she said, her voice breaking. "I just need you here." Noah ran over and wrapped his arms around both of them. "We're a family now, right, Mom? Uncle Vincent is our family now." Vincent hugged the boy, then pulled Camille into his arms. The three of them stood there beside the Christmas tree, lights blinking softly, snow falling outside the window. And for the first time in his life, Vincent Moretti felt like he belonged somewhere called home. Outside, snow kept falling, whitening the city of Chicago in silence. But inside that small apartment, 3 souls had found warmth in the heart of winter. Some people are born into the cold, but every now and then, they find someone worth melting for. This story reminds us that no matter how harsh life becomes, no matter how much darkness surrounds us, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes, angels do not come from above. They come from the places we least expect. And sometimes, the people with the deepest wounds are the ones most able to heal others. If this story touched your heart, please hit the subscribe button for our channel, tap like, and share this video with the people you love. Every subscription, every like, every share helps us bring more meaningful stories to you each day. We want to hear from you. How did this story make you feel? Have you ever lived through moments that seemed hopeless, only to find that light appeared? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every comment, and we value every story you share, from the deepest part of your heart. Thank you for staying with us until the end of the video. We wish you and your family good health, a life full of joy and peace every day. Remember, no matter how cold the world outside may be,